Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Witchcrafter deck profile. This deck actually summons out some of the coolest spellcasters in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it has all sorts of amazing spell cards that can recur themselves at the end of every single turn, which is really cool. This deck is amazing and even plays one of the most smug monsters in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And is probably one of my favorite artworks of the entire game, just with all the stuff that's going on in the background, and it's probably one of the prettiest secret rare cards I have ever seen in the entire game. And without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below because you have some awesome rewards for you guys, like getting your description for every single video, getting a signed card sent in the mail, or even getting requested deck profile just like this one every single month that you are a patron along with test stands. So without further ado guys, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing a single copy of Witchcrafter Madame Veer. So this card's really good in the deck too. She has some really amazing effects that during the damage calculation of a spellcaster monster battles an opponent's monster, then you can reveal any number of spell cards with different names in your hand, and if you do, the battling monster gains 1,000 attack and defense for each card revealed. So you have 5 spells in your hand, you can reveal all 5, and then that monster gains 5,000 attack points, which is really cool. And then once per turn, until the end phase of the turn. And then quick effect, you can discard a spell to negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of the turn, which is amazing, and it just cold waves the entire opponent's side of the field, which is an amazing effect. We then play a single copy of Witchcrafter Golem Aruru. Witchcrafter Golem Aruru, I've actually bumped down to 1. I really like this card, and I kind of want to play it at 2, but with all the other cards that I'm playing this deck, I'm kind of playtesting right now at 1, but if you want to play 2, you can definitely get away with it, because what this card does is when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a spellcaster monsters you control, or targets it for an attack, you can quick effect, target one card your opponent controls, or a Witchcrafter spell in your graveyard, special summon this card, and you return that target to the hand, and you can only use your effect once per turn, but her downside is that once per turn during your opponent's standby phase, return this card to the hand, which is the only real downside of this card, but it's a downside and an upside because if your opponent attacks again, you just special summon her back and then bounce a card again. So she's good and bad at the same time with that second or that last effect. We then play 2 copies of Witchcrafter Hane. Witchcrafter Hane is one of the big boss monsters of this deck, and probably my favorite of all the Witchcrafters. Her effect is that your opponent cannot target other spellcaster monsters you control with card effects, and then quick effect, you can discard a spell to target a card on the opponent's control and destroy that target, which is really good to be able to pop additional cards on your opponent's side of the field. She actually has Monarch stats, which is kind of interesting. We then play 3 copies of the Witchcrafter Blacksmith. She's really cool too. Her name is actually in German, it's Blacksmith, which is kind of neat. But during the main phase, quick effect, you can tribute this card and then discard a spell to special summon a Witchcrafter monster from your deck. All of the Witchcrafters that are level 4 and lower share that particular ability, which is kind of neat. And then they all also have an ability that you can banish them from the graveyard, and then you get additional effects. This one lets you send a Witchcrafter card from your deck to the graveyard, which is really good to be able to just send those cards from your deck to the graveyard. We then play 2 copies of Pottery. Pottery is pretty good too because she lets you, during your main phase, you contribute her and then discard a spell, special summon a Witchcrafter from your deck. And then she also has the ability that you can banish her from your graveyard to draw a card and then send a Witchcrafter card from your hand to the graveyard, which if you didn't activate one of the same name of the spell card, then you can gain its effect to be able to add it back to your hand during the end phase. We then play 3 copies of Witchcrafter Ginny. I like 3 copies of Witchcrafter Ginny. I think she's ridiculously good in this deck. And she has some amazing effects that during the main phase, quick effect, you contribute her, discard a spell, special summon a Witchcrafter from your deck, except another copy of herself. And then you can banish her from your graveyard and a Witchcrafter spell from your graveyard, and her effect becomes the effect of the Witchcrafter spell. So for instance, if you have Holiday in your graveyard, you can banish her and Holiday and then be able to use Holiday to be able to revive a Witchcrafter from your graveyard. So you have all sorts of really cool effects that you can activate with Ginny. We then play 3 copies of Psyframe Gear Gamma and 1 copy of Driver. Psyframe Gear Gamma and Driver are really good in this particular deck because when you tribute off your copies of your Witchcrafter monsters, they're not on the field anymore, and if your opponent tries to chain something like an Ash or something like that, you can then activate the Psyframes from your hand to be able to go into your particular play that you need, which is super helpful to be able to get those monsters on your side of the field as quickly as possible. because you want to be able to special summon Madame Veer from the deck. And plus, if you use your Cyframe Gear Gamma and your driver, you can actually go into some really awesome boss monsters in the extra deck, which is really helpful. You can even go into a copy of Access Code Talker or Zero Boros just by using one copy of Gear Gamma and driver, which is really awesome. We then play a single copy of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. The reason we play Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit as a one-of is because you can summon this card off your copy of Needle Fiber, because what you're going to do is you're going to use the copy of your Gamma to be able to negate something. If your opponent tries to stop one of your Witchcrafters, you use Gamma, special summon driver, link these two away for a Needle Fiber, use the Needle Fiber to summon Ghost Ogre. You can use that at that point to pop a card on your opponent's side of the field, go into Selene, and then go from there into a copy of Access Code Talker, which is really cool because you can use the copy of Selene, which is going to help you get a spellcaster back from the graveyard. So you have all sorts of really cool plays to climb up into a Zero Boros or into a copy of Access Code Talker or any Link 4 that you particularly want to go into. But the copy of Ghost Ogre, in my opinion, is the best option for this particular build because you can use the copy of Ghost Ogre to pop something on the field. If you don't want to go for Needle Fiber, you can just use this card on the field to be able to pop another card when an opponent's monster activates an effect, which is pretty good. Or when a spell trap effect is activated, either you can destroy a card on the field, which is pretty nice. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Instant Fusion. Instant Fusion is super helpful in the deck because it can help you go into Millenniumize or Thousand Eyes Restrict to be able to negate card effects while you're trying to go off, because ultimately it's what you're trying to do with your copy of Gamma and Driver, which is really important. We play 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance because you don't really need any particular monster in the extra deck. You play a lot of doubles and 2-ofs in the extra deck, and is why I play Access Code Talker and Zero Boros, because I can climb into either or. It kind of depends on which one you need, but you don't really need the extra deck at all. You really kind of focus on summoning Madame Veer and Hane, and those two are the big bosses of the entire deck that are going to be able to OTK your opponent. But basically, this card is really good at getting you more cards. We then play a single copy of Reasoning because it helps to get your Witchcrafter cards in the graveyard as quickly as possible with the copies of the spell cards. It's really helpful to get those cards into the graveyard as quickly as possible because they recover during the end phase. One copy of By Street. By Street's really neat because the first time a Witchcrafter you control will be destroyed each turn by battle or by card effect, it's not destroyed. And if a Witchcrafter monster you control would discard to activate its effect, you can send this card from the field to the graveyard instead. And then during the end phase, if you control a Witchcrafter monster while this card is in your graveyard, you can put this card back face up in your spell and trap card zone, but you can only use either of those 2 bottom effects, either or per turn. We then play a single copy of Scroll, which pretty much does the exact same thing, but once per turn, when a spellcaster monster destroys a monster by battle, you get to draw a card instead. And it also shares the ability of this card. If you control Witchcrafter and it's going to just discard for its effect, you can send this card from your field to the graveyard instead, and it recurs itself as well, but you can only activate either or effect. We then play 3 copies of Witchcrafter Holiday, which is essentially Monster Reborn. Unless you target a Witchcrafter in your graveyard and special summon it. And all of your Witchcrafter spells share the ability that during your end phase, if you control Witchcrafter monster while this card's in your graveyard, you can add this card from your deck, from your graveyard to your hand, and you can only activate each effect of this card, each effect of Witchcrafter Holiday once per turn, and only once that turn, which is really good to get you a bunch of spells back in your hand. We then play 3 copies of Witchcrafter Creation. I think Witchcrafter Creation is probably one of the best cards in the entire deck because it's a searcher. You get to add a Witchcrafter monster from your deck to your hand, and then during your end phase, if you control a Witchcrafter monster, while this card is in your graveyard, you can add this card to your hand, and you can only use 1 Witchcrafter Creation effect per turn, and only once that turn, which is really important because, like, if I activate the copy of Witchcrafter Creation, then I can't get it back from the graveyard during the same turn. But if it's in the graveyard already, then I can add it back to my hand later, which is pretty good. Then we play 3 copies of Witchcrafter Unveiling. Witchcrafter Unveiling is really good in this deck. You get to special summon a Witchcrafter monster in your hand, and if you do, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to the activation of your spellcaster effects for the rest of the turn. And then during your end phase, if you control a Witchcrafter while this card is in your graveyard, you can add it back to your hand, but you can only use either effect once per turn. It helps you get out Hane to your side of the field. It helps you get out your Golem Aruru. It helps you get Madame Veer if you draw into Madame Veer. This card's just overall really good to help you swarm the field and OTK the opponent. opponent. We then play 3 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. Foolish Burial Goods is really good in this deck too because it helps you send the exact Witchcrafter spell that you need to the graveyard, so you can get it back during the end phase to use it the following turn. Like for instance, if I don't have Holiday in my hand and I feel like I need that card later, I'll go ahead and activate Foolish Burial Goods, and it baits out Ash Blossoms as well, because if I don't get it, it's not the end of the world, but if I do get it, it's just going to be more card advantage. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Witchcrafter Patronus and 2 copies of Summon Limit. So Summon Limit's really good because neither player can special summon more than 2 times per turn, and I'm usually not going to summon more than 2 times per turn anyways, which is totally fine. It's really hurting the opponent more than it's hurting us. You want to play this card as at least a 2 of. And then Witchcrafter Patronus is really good too because it lets you target a spellcaster monster that was banished or in your graveyard and shuffle it into the deck. So it helps you kind of get those cards back in the deck to keep recurring your plays over and over again. And also she has the ability that if this card's in your graveyard, except the turn it was sent there, then you can banish this card and then target any number of your banished Witchcrafter spells with different names and then add them to your hand, which is really, really, really good with your Witchcrafter monsters banishing for effects, and just really good overall with Foolish Burial Goods to send from deck to graveyard, which is overall an amazing card. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're playing a lot of 2 of, so we're playing 2 copies of Alamirage. Alamirage is really good in the deck because you need Hot Rod Flames and Bunnies, and if you know where that reference is, definitely comment down below because I will give you a heart if you know where Hot Rod Flames and Bunnies is from. You guys are awesome if you know that. But what this card does is basically, its effect doesn't matter. It's really, its normal summon effect is really good because if this card is, if you normal summon a monster with 1,000 or less attack, then you can use its effect to link summon this card using that monster, which is super helpful. You can use Jenny or Pottery on your side of the field to link summon into this card, so it's really good to get the Witchcrafter in the graveyard to get their additional effect off, especially Jenny. We then play a single copy of Relinquished Anima. Relinquished Anima helps you break boards, because if you go into your copy of Thousand Eyes or Millennium Eyes, and there's a zone open that's pointing to a monster, if your opponent leaves a link zone that's pointing down, like an Access Code Talker or something like that, you can summon this to the zone that that monster points to, and then gobble up the monster. Basically, this card points to a monster, it gobbles it up, which is pretty nice. We then play 2 copies of Linkuriboh. Linkuriboh is another one of those monsters that's really nice to have in the extra deck to go into with your copy of Millennium Eyes or Thousand Eyes. We just play a single copy of Crystron Needle Fiber. You don't really summon this all that often, but it helps with the copies of Ciphering Gamma and Omega with that play that I was describing to you earlier. We then play a single copy of Nightmare Phoenix. Phoenix just helps us pop spells and traps. 2 copies of Selene, Queen of the Master Magicians. This card is ridiculous in this deck. This card is really good. You just put 2 monsters, including a Spellcaster monster, and if this card is link summoned, you play spell counters on equal to the number of spell cards on the field or in the graveyard, which is insanely good. And it also has the ability that once per turn during the main phase quick effect, you can remove 3 spell counters to special summon the Spellcaster monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position to a zone this card points to. So the really quick thing that you were doing is you're summoning out Gamma by negating a card, summoning out Driver from deck, then using those 2 monsters to go into your copy of Needle Fiber, and then using that to go into Ghost Ogre, and then use Ghost Ogre plus another monster on your side of the field to go into another link play, which is super helpful on your side of the field. If you have another spellcaster on your side of the field, then you can go into your copy of the Selene, which is really helpful to go into, and then go from there. We then play a single copy of Zero Boros. Zero Boros is super helpful to be able to go into because Zero Boros is just amazing to help out to go into so many different plays because you're banishing so many different monsters. 1 copy of Access Code Talker just to be able to pop stuff on the field. 1 copy of Thousand Eyes Restrict and 2 copies of Millennium Eyes Restrict because I really want to summon the Millennium Eyes Restrict the majority of the time. And you can also use these cards if you draw into the instant fusion to go into the copy of Selene, because you have to use a spellcaster to go into Selene. And once you've already negated that card effect with your copy of your Ciphering Gear Gamma, you can just use the Witchcrafter that you special summon from deck to go into this card, which is super helpful. And then you have the Ghost Ogre to pop something else, which is nice. And then we have a single copy of Cyframe Lord Omega. So I actually have to give a quick shout out to Crush Cards, which really helped out. They really helped out with this deck profile. I really saw their build and was like, man, their build is really interesting, and they actually were the inspiration for the Selene combo to go into the access code and the Topologic Zero Boros, which is really, really awesome. So really quickly, definitely check out their channel. That's a really quick combo from them, but I kind of expanded on it with the Ghost Ogre. But anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Definitely tell me what you think of this deck down in the comments down below, and definitely hit that bell in there so you guys can become part of the notification squad, because we have some awesome awards for you guys, like getting your name in the description for every single video, getting a signed card sent mail, or even getting requested deck profile every single month that you are a patron. And we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.